So in evaluating algebraic expressions, we're going to start to see variables at work. So these will come through as letters like x and y, and what we're going to focus on in this video is plugging in values for our variables. So we're going to be given what x is representing and what y is representing. So x is a -4 and y is a +3. So what we have down here are these different algebraic expressions. And what we're going to do is plug in those values. So what I like to emphasize here is the use of parentheses. What we want to do is use parentheses for these substitutions. It can sometimes work without the parentheses, but sometimes it can lead to errors and even calculating things in an incorrect way. But if you use parentheses every time, it works every time. So I'm going to go to the extreme of just always using parentheses, even though it might be kind of extra for some of the calculations we do. So let's take a look at this. So like 5y minus 2x here, what I'm going to do is rewrite this as 5. Instead of y, I'm going to put parentheses and then -2 and parentheses. Now in that first set of parentheses, I want to substitute in y equals +3. So +3 is going to go in there. And then where there's x, I'm going to substitute -4 in there. So 5 times 3 is 15. And then -2 times -4 is a +8. So 15 plus 8 is 23. And that's evaluated our algebraic expression given those values. In this next example here, so we have x, so I'm going to replace that with parentheses and then squared -2 and then times y. I'm going to put parentheses. So where x is, I'm going to plug in -4. Where y is, I'm going to plug in +3. Now this is a case where the parentheses are super important. If we had left off parentheses, it would have looked like -4 squared with no parentheses in there, which simplifying that expression would be -4 times 4. So we wouldn't repeat the negative since it isn't contained underneath that exponent, and that would simplify to -16. But we want the parentheses, because for this version, then we're taking -4 times -4. So since the negative's contained in there, it repeats. So this will simplify to a +16, which is exactly what we want. So that's a case where the parentheses are super important. -2 times 3 is a -6. So 16 minus 6 is 10. All right, our last example here. So I'm going to have 2 parentheses plus 3 parentheses plus 8 over 4 parentheses minus parentheses. So plugging in x equals -4, I'll plug it into the numerator and the denominator, and +3 in the numerator and denominator. Then I'm going to start simplifying. And with fractions, before you divide anything, you want to completely simplify the numerator, completely simplify the denominator. So in the numerator, we'll have a -8 plus 9 plus 8 over -16 minus 3. In the numerator, -8 plus 9 is 1. So 1 plus 8 over -16 minus 3, which is -19. So this is going to be a +9 over -19. When you have negative fractions, you can write it in a few different ways. This is fine with the negative in the denominator. If you like to write it with the negative out front, like -9 over 19, that's completely correct. You could even move the negative to the numerator, like -9 divided by +19. Those all represent the same fraction. Now, getting out a fraction like this is totally fine. It happens when simplifying, but sometimes our brain likes to do a little thing when it's kind of messy like this that maybe we're not right, maybe we did something wrong. So with a question like this where it's all numbers, let's go ahead and plug it into a calculator. Now we can't plug in the original expression since there are variables involved, but what we can do is plug in with the number substituted in. So what I'm going to do is basically copy what I just wrote there, and put it into the calculator. So on the calculator, there's this A over B button here, which is nice for separating a numerator and denominator. And then I'm going to have 2 parentheses -4. I'm just going to copy it exactly how I wrote it down. And then my denominator, 4 times -4 minus 3. And with that, I get this messy decimal out, which is fine. I could plug in to the calculator 9 over -19 and see how it compares. What you can also do is this button over here, if you hover over it, it says convert to fraction. This can be really helpful, and it will even reduce your fractions for you. So if we have really big, messy fractions and you're not sure whether or not it's reduced, you can use this function here. So if I switch that, then I can see my -9 over 19, and then I know with 100% certainty I got it right. So that's how we're going to evaluate algebraic expressions, by plugging values in.